Hey guys, Nicole here with Obscure Reptiles and Caging, and today we're doing an adult bearded dragon care guide. So let's get started. Hey guys, so in the past we have done a Hatchling Bearded Dragon guide. Recently we just did one all about breeding bearded dragons, and this time we're going to be going over adult bearded dragon care. It is a little bit different than hatchling care, especially when it comes to diet and temperature, so we're going to get into all of that. But just so you guys are aware, bearded dragons are a species that you're going to want to start off with a smaller enclosure when they are first brought home if you're getting a little baby hatchling. But if you're getting an adult, you're going to want something that's a minimum of 3x2x2 for a female and a 4x2x2 for a male. The reason why you want all that upward space is so you are able to better regulate the temperature of the hot spot. So I've tried in the past making shorter cages specifically for my bearded dragons or my wife's bearded dragons. But the problem with that is if you're getting your hot spot, let's say you're going for an adult bearded dragon, you're going for a 95 to 100 degree hot spot. To get that temperature, if it's a very low cage with not enough space for that heat to basically escape or move around, you're going to get a really nice hot spot, but then your cool side is going to be way too warm. You don't want your cool side any warmer than around 80 degrees. So that way they can self-regulate between that 95 to 100 degree basking area, their hot spot, and they can move away and get to that cooler 78 to 80 degree cool side. But if your enclosure is not large enough, to get that 100 degree hot spot normally means it raises the entire temperature of that cage, and people all the time message how to lower that, and my best advice is get something that's larger, especially a 4x2x2 cage really helps you get a good basking temperature and cool side of the enclosure. Compared to babies who need it a little bit warmer, like I had said, it's only about a 95 to 100 degree hot spot for an adult. A very good sign is they're sitting there with their mouth open. That means that they've hit perfect temperature and they're a few degrees warmer than they should be, so they'll actually open their mouth to let a little bit of heat escape. That is a great thing. That's a good sign. You want your dragon to do that. If you see that happening right under their hot spot, is perfect. If they're doing that on the cold side of the enclosure, something is wrong, and make sure you address that quickly. In just about all my care guide videos, we talk about different temperature guns, things like that, and we mention these all the time. This right here is a little temperature gauge, and it tells you the humidity. The reason why I really like these Groove ones is they hook up to your phone via Bluetooth. So if you're at home, you have your Bluetooth, these will give you constant updates of the temperature of their enclosure. So you put one in their hot spot, one in their cold spot, and at any time when you're home on the Bluetooth, you can just pull it up and check and see exactly what temperature your dragon's enclosure is in the hot and the cool spot. At night, you do not want your enclosure getting any cooler than 70 degrees. 65 degrees and under can actually harm or kill your animal, so make sure it's around 70 degrees. That's easily achieved with a heating pad or recessed heat tape, but you want to make sure that you're controlling it with a reptile grade thermostat. Just make sure you're getting something that's actually regulating the temperature, and again, you can use those and you can use a temperature gun to get that dialed in. If you're bringing home a new bearded dragon and this is a brand new enclosure that's never been used, make sure you have a few days before you're getting that animal that you can actually adjust and make that cage perfect. Anytime between winter and summer, you may need to do different types of bulbs to reach the correct hot spot. You might need different types and levels of hides and climbs so they can get closer or further away from their hot spot, and a bunch of stuff like that. So just make sure you have quite a few days before you're getting that animal to really work with and tweak your cage, because it does take a little bit of time to dial it in and make it perfect for that animal. All bearded dragons, whether they are babies or adults, they need a tube UVB. A small little bulb is not going to cut it. They need to have a tube UVB that's at least 2/3 of their enclosure. So if you have a 3-foot long cage, you have to have at least a 2-foot long tube UVB. There are tons of different ones. Arcadia, everyone says, is the best. You can even get little testers and put them under to test how good your UVB is. But make sure you're doing a lot of research. There's a ton of different ones. Just take some time, do some research, read some reviews. I'm not going to really recommend an exact UVB because based on your setup or based on where you're located, there might be different things that will work better for you. Bearded dragons can actually be quite clumsy animals, so make sure you're not giving them anything too tall. For example, if you're giving them a basking shelf, make sure it's nothing above a foot because these guys will jump, they can fall. Make sure that anything you have in their enclosure is secure because they will try to climb on it and they will fall off of just about anything they can climb onto. Now, when you have a baby, you're feeding that baby every day, multiple times a day, and majority of their meals are going to be insects and bugs. But once they reach anywhere from 10 months to 18 months, depending on how large your animal is and how well that they are growing, you're going to want to switch that animal to a 75% diet of green salads, veggies, fruit, and you're only going to want to be feeding about 25% of that meal being bugs. What works best for us is we'll actually pick 1 or 2 days of the week for them specifically to get bugs, and the rest are going to be getting different types of variations of green salads. There's tons and tons of things you guys can use. The best thing is just to go online and look up lists of appropriate food, because there are way too many for me to list right now. It's super easy if you just go and Google food bearded dragons can eat. A huge list is going to come up. Make sure you're changing up their diet and giving them a different variety. One of the best things I like to do is every day of the week they get completely 3 to 5 different items for that day. These are an animal that still need to eat every day when they are adults. So if they're eating every day, they're also going to the bathroom every single day. So make sure not only are you spot cleaning them every day, you're giving them a very good thorough cleaning with something like F10 disinfectant. Some people like to mix bleach and water, stuff like that. I like to use the veterinarian grade F10 disinfectant, just so I know it's really disinfecting everything and is completely safe for the animals. But make sure you're spot cleaning and you're doing a really good thorough clean at least once a week. A fat bearded dragon is an adorable bearded dragon, but that is not healthy for that animal. Unfortunately, that really limits their lifespan, so you don't want to have an overweight bearded dragon. But these are some of our dragons, and as you can see, some of the females are a little bit larger right now, but that's because they have eggs in them. They could have up to 25, 30 eggs in there. But the best examples are our males. They're not overweight, they're not super slim, they're a nice good size. You're going to want to make sure your dragons are good and they're healthy and they're eating a good variety. You're going to want to add calcium to every time you do bugs, and I like to sprinkle it on all of their salads. They also do really well with things like bee pollen that can actually help them with their digestive system. Unfortunately, I see it all the time where people actually have several bearded dragons living in the same enclosure. You do not want to do that. Breeders will, when they are first born, for the first 6 to 8 weeks until they're ready to go, and there are limits to that. If you have too many babies in a cage at the same time, you could have fights break out and they could actually nip off each other's toes. They can bite each other's tails off. You really want to limit that. But when they're only 6 to 8 weeks old, if you only have several in a cage, like for example you see a breeder doing that, that is really the only time it's acceptable. Once they hit about 8 weeks old, that's when they can really start doing damage, and all the babies should be completely separated from one another. So especially if you have an adult or you're getting an adult and they say, oh yeah, it's super friendly, it loves being in cages with other ones, don't do it. If you have 2 males, they can be super aggressive. 2 females can be super aggressive, and a male and female, that male is going to overbreed that female, not leave her alone, bite and scratch on her constantly. So you don't want to keep groups. You can only have 1 bearded dragon per cage unless you're breeding, but when that happens, it's only for a couple hours at a time, and then you put them back into their own enclosures. Even if you have no plans on breeding your bearded dragon, it's good to know the gender. We did just do a breeder guide for bearded dragons. I'll put it in the description box below for you guys. In the first 2 minutes, we show you how to tell the difference between a male and a female. The reason why you might want to know is because females, even if they're never bred, they're never around a male their entire life, they can still produce eggs for you. If she's never been with a male, those eggs are not fertile, you can throw them out, but she could become egg bound if not all of the eggs come out or she doesn't have a comfortable place to lay her eggs. So make sure if you do want a female or you do have a female, you have that in mind, and look for things like her not eating, her digging, her scratching around, and her belly getting large when she's not really eating. Those could be signs she's about to lay eggs, and you're going to need to put her in a lay box or somewhere comfortable for her to lay them so she can get them all out, they won't get bound up in her, and she doesn't get sick. For bearded dragons, you're going to have to mist or spray them daily so they can drink, and it's also really good to soak them at least once a week. Just want to put enough water in so that if they choose, they can lay in it. If they want to stand up, they can be out of the water so they don't drown, but you don't have to leave them in there long, only about 5 or 10 minutes. You can do a little bit longer if they're going into shed, but nothing crazy. That way they're able to drink, they get hydrated, and especially if they're going into shed, it really helps them in their skin. Make sure you don't put any type of loose bedding inside of their enclosure. Like I said, they're kind of silly animals and they will do things that you don't expect. For example, if you have loose bedding, like let's say you have sand as the substrate, they can and they will eat that substrate, especially if they're chasing bugs or if something falls out of their bowl and that's how you feed them, they're going to eat that. Even sometimes they'll just walk up and eat things that they shouldn't. So make sure there's no loose particles. They can get bound up and they can die from that type of thing. So make sure you just do no loose substrate. The easiest and best, in my opinion, is not putting any substrate at all. If you have a good, proper PVC enclosure and they go to the bathroom, just one wipe with a paper towel and a little bit of a spray, and that's all you need to do, especially for spot cleaning. You can do things like the carpets and the rugs, but those tend to hold bacteria. They tend to have smell and really hold onto it. They will work, but it's a lot easier just to have a proper enclosure, something like PVC, fully sealed around the edges, so when they do use the bathroom, you can just wipe it up every morning. Generally, when we go to feed everyone, we wipe them up from the day before, we feed them, and then it's a pretty easy process. Bearded dragons need a light cycle of 12 hours on, 12 hours off. That is best achieved with one of these. There's a whole bunch of different brands. You can do just about anything. Just plug in your UVB and your bulb right into this. It'll keep them on for 12 hours a day and then turn off for 12 hours a day, or however you set this. They're going to need that. It's a lot easier than remembering every day to turn it on, turn it off. So one of these is only like $10 or $15. I'd highly recommend. But that's it for this video. If you guys have any questions, you can put them in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We do videos every Wednesday, and we'll see you next Wednesday.